All right, good evening, everyone. This is George Floyd Trial, day 11, and we're having more people testifying. And thinking about this too, believe that the judge stated that they're going to have closing remarks next week. So that's going to be really interesting. We'll finally reach a verdict. And of course, the jurors, they're going to deliberate. They're going to tell them, like, okay, what's the proper instructions to go out here and, read off and you think you should be charged for. So we really in hype for that. And let's just see, man, as George Floyd gets justice. But pausing every so often to wipe away tears, Phil needs Floyd, which is Floyd's brother. He testified Monday at Derrek Chauvin's trial that his elder brother, George Floyd, was a big mama's boy who was destroyed by her death in 2018. It was so unique how they were with each other. He would lay up onto her in the fetus position like he was staying in the womb, still in the womb, he said. Being around him, he showed us how to treat our mom and how to respect our mom. He loved her so dearly. The heartfelt testimony came as prosecutors sought to humanize Floyd, the 46-year-old black man who died last May after former Minneapolis police officer Chauvin kneeled on his neck and back for more than 9 minutes. Also on Monday, an expert cardiologist testified that Floyd died from cardiopulmonary arrest caused by low oxygen levels brought on by prone restraint and positional asphyxia. Yep. Make him the fifth doctor to say as much in the trial. Yeah. He's not the only doctor that said it. In addition, a police use of force expert testified that Chauvin's actions were unreasonable and excessive. After calling 38 witnesses over the course of 11 days, Minnesota prosecutors neared the end of their case against Chauvin. The defense is expected to begin calling its own witnesses on Tuesday, and closing arguments are expected for next Monday, Judge Peter Cahill said in court. Chauvin's 45 has pleaded not guilty to second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter charges. The prosecution case against Chauvin came in three distinct phases. What happened to Floyd last May, the Minneapolis police use of force policy, and a medical analysis of why Floyd died. In cross-examination and in opening statements, defense attorney Eric Nelson has focused on three arguments he says will acquit Chauvin. Floyd died of drug and health problems. Chauvin's use of force was ugly but appropriate, and the crowd of bystanders became hostile and distracted Chauvin from taking care of Floyd. Witnesses called by the prosecution have contested each of those theories, but it would be up to the jury of 5 men and 9 women to ultimately decide. While the trial has focused on Chauvin and Floyd, the social stakes of the high-profile case were made vividly clear when police shot and killed a black man Sunday in the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center. Okay, I'm sorry right there for a little bit. So yeah, when that happened, when I talked about my previous video with the Dante Wright situation, so he wanted to issue a request. Eric Nelson, which is a defense attorney, he wanted to issue a request like, okay, well, because this might actually influence the jurors and this stuff like that, because this happened 10 miles north, of the trial. And, the judge actually pretty much denied that request there because he believed that, okay, that was a separate issue. We're focusing now here on the George Floyd. And he don't want them, watching the news. You don't want them, participating, stuff like that. But I agree with the judge on that. In the light of the arrest, Nelson asked the court to question jurors further and sequester them from the rest of the trial. Judge Carroll rejected the request and said he plans to fully sequester the jury for deliberations next week. Exactly. Jurors in the trial are currently partially sequestered, meaning they are released to go home each day. Minnesota is unique in that it allows spark of life evidence in which the victim's family or friends can speak about them on a personal level. During Phil Floyd's tearful testimony, prosecutors showed several photos of a smiling George Floyd with his mother, his basketball teammates, and his young daughter. Phil Floyd described his brother as an athlete and a dedicated student of both basketball and football. He said George Floyd helped take care of his siblings, but he didn't know how to cook, so he made them banana mayonnaise sandwiches and syrup sandwiches. He was so much of a leader to us in the household. He would always make sure we had our clothes for school, make sure we get to school on time. He's just like a person that everybody loved around the community. He just knew how to make people feel better. Their mother died in May 2018. George Floyd was in pain during the funeral, he said, and that was the last time they saw each other alive and in person. Seth Salton, a use of force expert, former police officer, and associate professor of law at University of South Carolina, said Chauvin's action represented deadly force and were unreasonable. Both the knee across Mr. Floyd's neck and prone restraint were unreasonable, excessive, and contrary to acceptable police practices. Sultan said. No reasonable officer would have believed that was an appropriate or acceptable use of force, he added. Prosecutors played more than a dozen separate video clips of Chauvin restraining Floyd. Sultan offered his analysis of what the officers did compared to a reasonable use of force. For example, he highlighted two instances in which an officer on scene asked to move Floyd from the prone position to his side, but Chauvin declined. That's deep. And it will indicate to a reasonable officer that at least one officer did not feel that Mr. Floyd presented a level of threat that required them to keep him in that prone position. His testimony was similar to that of a Los Angeles Police Department sergeant who testified last week as an expert witness of the prosecution. In addition, a number of Minneapolis police supervisors and training coordinators have rejected Chauvin's actions as contrary to policy. Dr. Jonathan Rich, a cardiologist based in Chicago, testified that Floyd's heart was unable to get enough oxygen because of how he was restrained. His review of the medical records, videos, and autopsy findings also rejected claims that Floyd's death may have been due to drugs or heart issues, as defense has suggested. I can state with a high degree of medical certainty that George Floyd did not die from a primary cardiac event and he did not die from a drug overdose, Rich said. I believe that Mr. Floyd his death was absolutely preventable, in addition to not putting him in that position in the first place. So when there were signs that was worsening, repositioning him, I think very likely would have saved his life. Floyd had high blood pressure and narrow coronary arteries, but his heart muscles show no evidence of injury. A doctor's testimony follows a series of medical experts who testified last week that Floyd died last May because of Chauvin's restraint. On Friday, the medical examiner who conducted Floyd's autopsy noted that Floyd's history of hypertension and the fentanyl and the methamphetamine in the system played a role in his death, but they were not the direct cause. In my opinion, the law enforcement subdual restraint and the neck compression was just more than Mr. Floyd could take by virtue of those heart conditions, Dr. Andrew Baker said. The first week of testimony largely focused on Floyd's final moments. Distressed bystanders watched Chauvin's knee on his neck, and then we had these medical force experts. That kind of concludes what's happened in day 11. Then we're going back here until tomorrow, and it's going to be interesting with these closing remarks. It's going to be a very emotional day, emotional week in general, and this is going to decide the fate of our nations. It's up to the jurors' hands. There's evidence there. People doing research. And I'm glad, like I said, the juries was able to be sequestered, go home each day and everything. So, they should, and which because they were getting very restless and deserve to get that rest and to be fresh for a trial. But that's all we have to say. That kind of concludes what's going on day 11. Tell me guys' thoughts here. I appreciate your patience here. Like, comment, subscribe, share this video. This Youngling Jr. I'm out. Have a good evening.